Charlie, good morning, everyone. An extraordinary breach of security. Early this morning, a small plane, crashing on the south lawn of the White House. There was some damage to the White House. President Clinton and family were not in the White House at the time. For more on the story, we go to ABC's Ann Compton. And do we know whether this was a terrorist attack, an attack designed to harm the president?
That is always what the White House Secret Service presumes. And when the president was not at home when this happened, but he was supposed to be in a bedroom window not far from where the plane came to rest. You can see you can't see really the plane very well, but you see the large magnolia tree, more than 100 years old. The plane tumbled into it, snapped off a branch, and actually crashed into a window on the main floor of the White House. The president's bedroom is upstairs. Just above that is the state dining room, then the president's bedroom window. He is still staying at Blair House across the street because of some air conditioning repairs being done at the White House. What makes this extraordinary is the plane, according to eyewitnesses, came in with no engine on. One eyewitness told me that the plane kind of banked to the right and went right in over the White House. Several eyewitnesses were talked to this morning. This is what they had to say before dawn.
All I can say, it was like a smooth glide. You know, like you have a glider, and it was kind of like gliding like that.
The engines were off?
Yeah, I didn't hear no engines.
How long was the crash?
It was like a boom, you know, just like that, you know. And that's all I saw. I was looking for some smoke and fire, but I didn't see none of that at all.
I was on Freedom Park up there, at the top of Executive Park, right alongside the White House, when I seen the light go by and then heard the impact. Apparently it bounced because it was like a secondary impact.
Now, bomb squads have checked the wreckage. They say they haven't found any explosives if this was supposed to blow up, but it still is very, very worrying to the Secret Service. They don't know where the plane came from, at least not yet.
And two quick questions. What do we know about the pilot, and were there any gunshots? The security guards at the White House certainly have the capacity to fire on planes coming into the area.
Well, we have also always been told that there's anti-aircraft missiles implanted secretly around the White House to ward off of a military attack, but apparently no shots were fired. The question of where the plane came from is a real one. The pilot's body is still in the wreckage. It has not been removed. And there is some report that the plane came from a suburban Maryland area, although we're quite close to a national airport. President Clinton was in Maryland yesterday at an event, but so far there's been no official comment of whether there could be any connection.
And no identity as to who the pilot was?
They have not released the identity of the pilot who died.
Thank you, Ann Compton. We'll be getting back to the White House for more later on.
CBS News White House correspondent Rita Braver has the latest on that story.
The Secret Service says preliminary blood tests show the pilot who was killed when he crashed his plane onto the White House grounds early yesterday morning had been drinking, and that there were traces of cocaine in his body. The chairman of the Senate Intelligence Committee says that presents significant information about 38-year-old Frank Corder.
This was an individual who was perhaps mentally disturbed.
Workers there failed to alert the Secret Service.
It was tracked. They know that from going back, but nobody was watching the radar. And obviously that needs to be corrected.
N.D. Consini said although there's a hotline between National Airport and the White House, there seems to be no official requirement that the FAA track airplanes that get too close.
There is no paper trail of any executive agreement or memorandum of understanding or directive from the president or anybody else.
With the plane's wreckage cleared away, new bushes already planted, and little evidence of yesterday's crash, the president was asked if he felt safe.
Yes.
It's unclear whether the Secret Service would have had time to react, even if it had been warned about the plane. But government officials say it's likely that pilots will face tougher FAA scrutiny when approaching Washington's restricted flyover zone. Rita Braver, CBS News.
Not clear then what happened early yesterday morning. A source says radar picked up the plane 7 miles from the White House as it headed south, bypassed the building, then made a U-turn and crashed on the south lawn. The FAA has a hotline to the White House and is supposed to notify the Secret Service whenever a plane flies into restricted airspace. If the system worked as it was supposed to, agents would have been warned several minutes before the crash.
Any time is better from the Secret Service's point of view that they can take what their mission is.
But even with extra time, it's uncertain what defensive measures could have been taken. When a stolen Army helicopter landed at the White House in 1974, agents used rifles and shotguns. One agent involved in that said bullet holes were later found in the nearby Treasury and Commerce departments. Stinger missiles reportedly are on the White House rooftop now, but using them would be tricky.
You have to hit the plane. If you do, then you've got burning debris falling all over Washington. If you miss it, you hit a building, or you might hit an incoming plane at National Airport.
And so what worries officials more than anything is that an incident like this exposes to everyone the limitations of the security net surrounding the White House and the president. Jackie Judd, ABC News, Washington.
And now to the investigation of last week's U.S. air crash near Pittsburgh. Authorities today found what could be a key piece of evidence. 132 people died in the crash of U.S. Air Flight 427. Investigators have several theories, but still not enough facts. Here's ABC's Jim Hickey.
5 days after the crash, investigators are still finding pieces of the wreckage. This morning, they recovered the right rear engine mount, which attaches the engine to the wing. It is an important piece of the puzzle. Investigators will examine it to determine if it broke off before the crash. They also plan to make computer models to examine at least 3 possible crash scenarios. One computer model will try to demonstrate what would happen if the engine mount broke off in flight, causing the rear portion of the right engine to drop away from the wing.
And that will then be compared to our flight data recorder information about what we know to have been the aircraft performance of a left turn.
The second computer program will try to simulate what would happen if the airplane's right thrust reverser malfunctioned in midair. Thrust reversers act as brakes for an airplane and should be used only after a plane lands. Some of the recovered pieces of wreckage suggest that half of the right engine thrust reverser may have somehow activated in midair, even though the systems are supposed to be activated on the ground.
They can only deploy when the throttles are at idle and...
In spoilers, commonly called speed brakes, along each wing. The spoilers on both wings normally flip up at the same time, helping to slow the plane down in the air. Investigators want to know if only one side flipped up during flight, and if that threw the plane off balance.
Aerodynamically, if a spoiler comes up on one side and not the other uncommanded, the airplane is simply going to roll in that direction.
Today, Boeing, which makes the 737, issued this statement. There have been no instances of in-flight deployment of systems creating reverse thrust on 737s like the one that crashed.
However, Boeing told ABC News there have been 4 such malfunctions on older versions of the 737. In every case, Boeing said, the planes landed safely. Jim Hickey, ABC News, Pittsburgh.